Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our last links to learning of this month. So hope you're doing well. I hope that here in Amiskwaci, Waskagan, and Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory, the sun is shining, the sun is out. It's a beautiful day. I hope wherever you are joining from, that you got to experience creators' beauty, creators' goodness, and let us know. Use that chat box. Let us know where you're joining from. We love to hear where everyone's coming from. We love this beautiful virtual community that Can Do has created. So let us know where you're joining from in that chat box. So my name is Michelle. I'm delighted to introduce our guest, speaker Angela Adsit. And I see we got some folks from Calgary, Treaty 7 territory joining us today. Love it, love it. I know Ken, who comes here every week, one of our faithful participants. He joins all the way from Ontario, so love that. Oh, we got Northwest Territories. Is that where I'm understanding where you're from? Awesome, awesome. So welcome everybody. Before we get started, let's just take a moment and press pause. I really believe, our ceremonies, our way of life, our prayers, help us to walk in a good way, help us to, retain the knowledge that's being passed on. And we're so blessed and honored for our guest speaker as she's sharing what she knows. So we just want to press pause and we want to acknowledge Creator and the good gifts that have been given to us. We give thanks for that sun rising in the east, meeting us for another day. And here we are this afternoon meeting together. We're thankful for all of the knowledge that's passed around. We're thankful for this virtual circle, this virtual community. We think of all of our relatives, all the four-legged, the winged ones, the swimmers. We think of the plants and the sacred waters, the medicine. So all of our relatives, all our relations surround us today. We are thankful for our family, our chosen family, the ones in our lives who help us to walk in a good way as well. So Creator, you've given us all of these beautiful gifts, and we just want to press pause and acknowledge and thank you for all that has been given to us. So hi Creator. All right, so let's get this party started, shall we? We got Angela Adsit in the house today. She's a proud member of the Tahltan Nation and resides on the unceded territory of the Splatsin people in the North Okanagan. She's held several executive level positions in both for-profit and non-for-profit Indigenous organizations. She has also sat on her nation's government board of directors who oversee all the economic development within the territory in the northern BC. So growing up in both worlds, she understands the need to integrate both societies and the various components of the community. So the community is built holistically, strategically, and with the local Indigenous ways of being and doing at the center, which is so important. She's an instructor with several Indigenous and non-Indigenous training educational organizations, and she develops culturally aware curriculum in Indigenous entrepreneurship and community and business development. So we're so looking forward to her presentation on economic capital. So you will learn about 3 systems of the economy and the basic and non-basic economic models to help develop local self-reliance. So we're really looking forward to you, Angela. Just a couple of pieces here. There will be sent, for those who are joining us this afternoon, there will be sent a link to you, an evaluation link. And we always believe your voice is so, so important, your feedback. So when you fill out that evaluation link, your name will be entered to win. And tomorrow, Elizabeth is doing the draw for a $500 Visa gift card. So get your feedback into Can Do. We love to hear from you. And there's that, bonus of you possibly winning that $500 Visa gift card. There also at the end will be opportunity for any questions or comments after today's presentation. So get ready to lend your voice to this conversation and use that chat box throughout today's presentation. If you have any comments, questions along the way, put it in there. If you're anything like me, I usually will forget. So sometimes I need to write things down right away. So put in that chat box and I will make note of it, and we will be sure to get back to that question, that thought, that comment at the end of today's presentation. All right, so are we ready? I'm super excited to have Angela here. We're honored. We understand people are busy and time is valuable. So we are absolutely delighted that you are here with us this afternoon. So Angela, I'm passing this virtual mic off to you.
Thank you, Michelle. I love your energy. Thank you very much. Really happy to be with you. Really excited to share, and with all learning, one of the most exciting things for me is learning from others. So one of the things I really look forward to is at the end, when you have your questions, comments, or any discussion items that you'd like to cover. I know that Michelle had mentioned that you could wait till the end, but I'm completely open. If somebody has a quick comment, or they want to just kind of drill down on one little section of what we're going to be covering, I have no problem with that. I may not see the chat because I'm very focused on what I'm doing. So please just feel free to speak up, and I will not be offended, and it's not interrupting. So I am going to share my screen. So give me 1 second here. There we go. Please tell me that you are able to see this.
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay, centered. Okay, perfect. Can you see the entire screen?
Yes.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at economic capital. Now, economic capital is one of 6 capital areas in community development, but it's going to be the lens through which we look at all the other 5. We've already done my introduction. I don't need to go into that, but this is what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at the 6 forms of capital. We're going to be talking about development versus growth, and people and ecosystems versus currency. We're going to look at the 3 systems of the economy, basic and non-basic economic models, and then we'll tie it all together. Sound good? Okay. So this is one of my favorite books, and I know that those of you who have attended SFU or have are currently working there are probably, hi again, are probably familiar with Mark Roseland, Dr. Roseland. So these are some of the quotes that he has in his book, which is an awesome book. I'm actually using it as a textbook in one of my courses right now. He says, done well, community economic development can enhance all 6 forms of community capital. And that's why we look at economic capital through this lens, because it really is the foundation of all the other capital areas in community development. An economy focused on development, which means to build and support existing businesses and increasing the multiplier effect. So basically the multiplier effect is how many times does a dollar go through the same community? So instead of taking your money and spending outside of community, how many times does a dollar move throughout a community? Rather than growth, and people and ecosystems rather than global trade is sustainable. So an economy, again, I'll read that again without all my extra notes in there. An economy focused on development rather than growth, and people and ecosystems rather than global trade is sustainable. A sustainable economic development integrates economic, social, and environmental objectives by considering the relationship between the economy and all the other community elements. Sometimes we can silo our economic development, and it does not serve the community in the best way possible, which is to really look at every area through the economic lens. And economic development is not just about business creation, it's about creating self-sustaining communities. So the first thing we're going to look at is natural capital. So what is natural capital? Well, natural capital encompasses things like food and water security. And of course, I've got this as much as possible looking through an Indigenous lens as well. So food and water security is the measure of the availability of food and water and individuals' ability to access them. That's what food and water security is. So how does economic development affect that? Well, it opens up a lot of doors to start looking at some food security. And you probably have heard of many different projects where they have brought in some vertical gardening or they've created community gardens. Another aspect is wildlife. This quote, I really liked it. Sustainable wildlife economy benefits people and nature using habitats and wildlife in an ecological, economic, and socially sustainable way. When communities living closest to wildlife have a clear role and a stake in managing nature, they have a stronger incentive to conserve it. And you'll see the quote, the source of the quote below. So how does, and these are questions for you. These are not questions that you have to answer right now. These are just things to think about. So how would economic development help to take care of the wildlife? Land, use of land, that often intersects with environmental economics, of course. So, how does economic capital affect the use of the land? And then industry and natural resources. So the supply and the demand and allocation of the Earth's natural resources to achieve optimal environmental and social benefits. One thing that I like to point out too and talk about is regarding economic capital is it's not always making money. It can also be saving money. It can be, conservation is also a way of improving the economy. As you know, if you can save money, reallocate or use it better, improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of operations, all of those things lend to the economy. So it's a good, as we're going through these, just kind of keep that in mind, that it's not always just about starting a business around something. It could be conservation, which is a huge, huge issue, of course, as we're all aware of. Then we have physical capital. And of course, housing. And I love this quote as well. In all civilization, capital fulfills two economic functions. First, it provides housing, and that's defined as the increment of well-being due to sleeping and living under a roof rather than outside. And second, as a factor of production. I find that very interesting. Physical capital. This is capital. Housing is crucial. Historically, increasingly sophisticated forms came later, as did constantly improved forms of housing. So we know of the challenges that we have in many of our communities with housing. Economic development obviously can greatly assist that. And, it is and should be, as it is, should be a priority in many of our communities. And technology. So technological innovation, economic growth, and overall human well-being are intricately linked, and stemming our innovative capacity means handicapping our potential to progress. In other words, if we are not open to technological advances, that really handicaps our potential to progress. So you think about the challenges that some of our communities have with even Wi-Fi. What can we do to bring Wi-Fi into our communities? How does economic develop help to support that as well? And then infrastructure, of course. This is our water filtration systems, sewage systems, electricity grids, cell phone towers, roads, and more. So you can see all of this is on a foundation of our economic development done properly, done well. Human capital, governance. The fundamental obstacle to promoting inclusive economic growth are primarily political in nature and are not due to a lack of technical expertise or knowledge about what needs to be done. I really I agree with this. I believe that, our ability to move forward as nations, as communities, is really built on our strong governance systems. So, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? What comes first, our economic development or creating that really good foundation of governance? I firmly believe that we really need to have that really strong base of governance to build our economic development upon. And that should be one of the first things that we do. And of course, governance is all based on whom we choose as leaders within our communities, right? So, when it really boils down to it, leadership creates governance, and then the governance then dictates and manages our economic development, which then supports all of the other capital areas. Education and training. This was a stat I thought was very fascinating. Every year of schooling raises earnings by 10% a year. And you'll see the quote there, the quote source. And of course, this is talking about high school and beyond. So this is, I think when you put something measurable to something like education and training, it can be motivating as well. So how can we enhance the education and training in our communities? Our economic development. I know in the Tahltan Nation, we take a good percentage. Any Tahltan that wants to go to school, we will make sure that their full schooling is covered. And as a result, there's several highly educated Tahltan people, which has also greatly impacted our communities. So that focus on education and training is so crucial for communities. And then of course, health also falls under human capital. So one's health has a direct effect on his or her ability to learn and work, and a lack of income affects one's health. So it's a circle. And so what can we do in our communities to help to support the human capital through our economic development? Again, rather than just focusing on creating businesses, what can we do to create sustainable communities through focusing on all of these capital areas? And then we have social capital. So social capital is per capita income grows more rapidly in communities with high levels of social capital, measured using the density of measurement organizations, crime rate, service to others, and member participation. So what is social capital? Social capital are the things like networks. It could be family systems. It could be groups of friends. It could be any type of group. It could be even hobby groups. Who are the networks within the communities? And then what are the norms? I like to make things easy to remember. So I have here networks, norms. What are the norms in news, communication? How do you communicate with each other? Is there communication? Do we need to improve communication in community? How would we do that? And then negotiations, which really is sharing, which increases trust with each other. So this is social capital, and this is an extremely, extremely important indicator of the ability for a community to grow economically. So, again, our economic development is extremely important, but how effective will it be if we don't have good social capital within our communities? So we can start the businesses, we can add money to our community. Are we also focused on building the social capital within our community? Extremely important, because if we want it to be sustainable, we have to build those networks and build that community. And then cultural capital. And this is a little bit different, but of course they overlap. But this is things like our ceremonies, our celebrations, art, spirituality, rituals, etc. Cultures, the fusion or integration of cultures helps to drive economic growth by making members more receptive to the possibility of economic cross-cultural collaborations with those of other cultures and facilitate the rate of globalization. So what does this mean? This really means that as we work with, like, for example, we have mining in Tahltan territory, we have a lot of mining. That's with the majority of our industry. You know, when we meet with our partners, we make sure that our ceremony is part of that meeting. Our partners understand what our culture is, but by the same token, we also understand what their culture is, because in the workplace, they have a way of doing work that requires possibly, you know, different ways of how we've done work in our own communities. There could, you know, because it's a different kind of work. And so to be able to, on both sides, to understand and appreciate the culture that we are working with is extremely important. And, you know, whether it be the people that come into our territory, or whether you leave your community and you go out to work outside the community, understanding the culture of the people that we are interacting with is extremely important, and to also preserve our own culture. So that cultural capital is, again, it's extremely important to the economic growth, just because for you personally and for the community. So let's look at what is growth versus development. So when we think of, you know, and I really appreciate that Indigenous communities typically have an economic development corp, and rather than an economic growth corp. And I really appreciate that, because the development refers to the whole community, right? It refers to qualitative, not just quantitative. It refers to you know, an improvement in circumstances, not just an increase in size and number. Development increase involves the increase in size and number, but the development encompasses overall changes, including growth and other progressive changes. And that is the whole focus of sustainable community development, is that focus on all capital areas. So it's important. So if you think about development would be an example of, you know, rather than maybe starting a new business, maybe it's your existing lines of business or community members that have businesses within their homes or outside their home, whatever it is. Maybe it means really, really focusing in on supporting what's already there. And again, keeping those dollars circulating within your own community. And making sure that maybe it's focusing on entrepreneurship, you know, putting more focus on entrepreneurship rather than only these great big, you know, JV partnerships that we all want, and they're excellent for the community. But, you know, it's a different mindset than growth when you're really focused on the development portion. And again, the number one way to really keep that in mind and keep that in focus is by focusing on all of the capital areas, not just the economic. And then here's 3 different models of the economic development here. So we've got our private, and these are all necessary for economic development within a community. One of the newest systems, of course, the third system, the social economy, it's more focus you've been finding more and more focus on this than in the past, just because the recognition of how important it is. But the private, you're all familiar with this. These are your market-driven trading. These are your small and micro businesses, your small to medium enterprises, large businesses, and then your multinational corporations. These are often the businesses that want to come into community to work with us. These are often the businesses that we will have our joint ventures with or our partnerships with. And those are important. And then we have our planned economy. So these are our non-trading. These are things like our community councils, the local authorities, national and regional governments, and the United Nations. And you can see it goes from small to big on the chart there. And then we have our social economy. So this is where you find that a lot a lot of times it's overlooked as to how important it is to overall community economic development. And not all of them are necessarily, income producing. Like sometimes you have clubs. That's hugely important because again, that goes back to the social capital. You have volunteer organizations, you have charities, you have, different groups that have formed because they see a need in the community. And so they want to meet that need. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that entity is going to be making any money, but they are supporting the fabric of the community, the needs in the community, which then elevates that community to the point where those people become healthier and they can then participate as well in the economy. So it's not only about making money, it's supporting the entirety of the community so that everybody is able to participate, which of course, the more participation you have in the economy is better for the individual, for the families, for the community. And it does spill over into the outside community, external stakeholders. So these are the three different models that you want to make sure that you look at all three of them. And then we look at some basic and non-basic income. What's the difference? So basic income is money that flows into the community from the outside world. So it's things like wages, salaries, or self-employment income, or non-employment income, such as welfare, old age security, guaranteed income supports, Canada Pension Plan, employment insurance, and child tax benefits. So that's what's considered basic income. Non-basic income, this is the employment income from jobs in the community that provide goods and services to members in the community. So these can be local businesses, it could be transportation services, financial services, personal services, home-based businesses. So these are jobs and businesses that have been created in the community to meet the needs of the community. And, I would venture to say that, this is, again, an extremely important part of what is necessary within our communities is entrepreneurship, supporting our local businesses. This is what is going to provide the sustainability. So wrapping it all up, this is really, this saying or this quote is one of my favorites. I have it on my website, and I believe that this summarizes all of the capital areas, that economic growth without investment in human development is unsustainable and unethical. So to be focusing on just businesses without, again, the focus on the entirety of all of our different capital areas, which, I feel is extremely, even more so important within our communities, is not going to see the change that we need and that we want. It will only really materialize. It will only, produce the results that we want when we take care of each other, we take care of our land, we take care of, our social networks, we take care of our families, we take care of our kids. At the end of the day, the monies that we bring into the community, whether it be basic or non-basic, or whether it's we bring in joint ventures or we support each other via our own businesses, that's what's going to keep us sustainable, is the taking care of each other in our land. Any questions, comments, or anything you'd like to discuss?
Oh, Angela, that was just so great. It was actually very refreshing to hear all that you had to share. I particularly was moved by you talking about the Tahltan, I think it's the Tahltan Nation. And, if anyone in the nation felt like that, education was important, that you would find a way. And I think that that's important because there's, I'm from a community where we're allotted, just so many people can go, to school with funding. And so that was just really encouraging to feel like, we're putting an investment in the people, into the community. And I just thought that that was a beautiful example that you shared. So we're going to open up the floor. Any comments, any questions about today's presentation? I was moved. I was inspired. I wrote a lot of notes actually in this short amount of time. You had some really good comments. So the floor is open. If anyone has any comments or questions, we would love to hear from you. I feel like you're giving us a lot to think about here. All right. So Patricia, come on in. I see that your hand is raised.
Yeah, my hand is raised. I'm just trying to get my camera. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
You can see my big head.
Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Angela. Just first off the top, I agree with you, Michelle. Your energy is infectious. I feel like I can finish the day here in a happy mood, just listening to you. Thanks for the presentation, Angela. I think that's fantastic. And I can imagine that you could probably spend a day on each of those slides on their own. So really nice high level summary. I'm new to economic development. I have a background in accounting and finance, but in terms of the bigger umbrella of economic development, I think for me, this was a good sort of snippet. If I was going to try and measure something like basic and non-basic income, how do you, if I'm looking at things and say I'm using like standard community well-being statistics from whatever the government Canada uses to capture that kind of stuff, is there a similar sort of metric to measure basic and non-basic income? And I'm assuming that sort of ties into how we might try and capture the multiplier effect from that.
Good question. And these questions, comments, and discuss, please, if anybody has anything to contribute, I welcome. I mean, this is open. So if you have something that you'd like to contribute to this, the answers, please do. Great question, Patricia. The challenge with basic income, of course, is people have to be willing to reveal that. But I do know that, the communities that I have worked within, they often, especially for income supports and stuff, they will often go through the band to get that set up. At least the communities that I've been in, that I've worked with. So if you are outside the band office, that might be something that you can do, is go to the band office. Sometimes they will share that information. Of course, that would be something that they'd have to get approval for, or a general number. I don't know. I have not done that personally, but I just know from my own experience that many of those services were actually facilitated through the band. As far as the non-basic and businesses, I know that when I was a CEO of SDC, we asked all of our businesses within the community to, present themselves so that we could support them in whatever way we could. And again, though, they have to be willing to do that. And so a lot of it depends on the participation of the members, in my experience. But anybody else have any other experience, please speak up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that was interesting. Thank you for that. And it just sort of ties into, I work for an organization and we do have the trust and the relationship with several nations. And so what we're doing is trying to rethink, how do we measure impact, really? And so this is an interesting way to sort of capture that, other than the standard sort of Government of Canada well-being statistics that we use right now. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I see in the chat box that Ken had asked about if there's a business evaluation scorecard for new and or existing businesses.
Is there a scorecard?
Yeah, evaluation. So Ken, I don't know if you want to elaborate on your question.
Yeah, it's Ken. Yeah, I just thought that through the presentation that if a new business coming into the community had a scorecard and they kind of ticked off, what have we looked at? What could we do better? And also it could be used for existing businesses in regard to the various types of capital. And we may be missing something if we're an existing business, and we could be doing better in the community. So it was just an idea, and if you have a scorecard, people can measure themselves against it. So whether it's coming brand new coming in, or an existing one. So it was just a thought.
That's a great idea. I have seen examples of scorecards like you've mentioned, usually they're quite specific to the community or an organization or the needs, even if it's profit or nonprofit, in my experience. But yeah, I mean, if you were to create, that's a great idea, to create one that's specific to Indigenous communities and specific to making sure that we cover all of the capital areas. If I'm hearing you correctly, is that what you're recommending or you're suggesting?
Yeah, originally I thought of a checklist. So you all the factors that you mentioned in your presentation, and you had a checklist, and you fill the boxes. No, I didn't do this, but maybe we did something else. So yeah, my first impulse was, when I was hearing you, is if you had a checklist and you can go through and check the boxes, and say, we're missing. We could be doing something in this area, and it could be beneficial to the community and to the business. So yeah, it was that, as I said, it was just a thought, and it could be tailored, as you mentioned. It could be tailored to a specific community. How do we want to measure a new business coming into our community, based on those various types of capital? So it was just a thought.
No, that's great. And that brings up a great point, because often communities have their community plan, their comprehensive community plan is, already complete. I know, often development corps have their own strategic plan. I think in the case of a community business, yeah, looking at the strategic plan of the community to find out what their needs are, what they've identified as needs. Yeah, that's a really great question.
Just further on that, you could measure, evaluate their strategic plan. Is it comprehensive? Is it missing some ideas that maybe they could add to, based on your presentation and the various types of capital?
Yeah, and see, that's my line of work. That's what we do. We work with communities to create those comprehensive community plans that include all of those capital areas. But working individually with a business, that has not been my experience, but there's no reason why it couldn't tie in. Absolutely. And oftentimes out of those comprehensive community plans, it identifies a need, right? So we look for gaps. Where are some gaps? Where are some needs in the community that could be filled by a local business, a business through a member? And then what are the barriers? So that's basically what we look for, but it's always through the lens of all the different, of a holistic, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I love that piece about the holistic. I particularly loved how you talked about, yeah, it's not just about making that money, that coin. It's also about seeing, is the community participating? Like, I think that is just gorgeous. That is about who we are as a people. It's all about the community and the people. So I really value that. All right, so we have, and I seen a comment from Robin. So she's saying, this is a new concept for me, and it was beautiful how you brought everything together at the end. I also very much appreciated it. I loved that quote, and I snapped a picture of that quote at the end of your presentation. It was beautiful. We do have a question here from Inez Lightning, under cultural capital, which I found I've never heard. If I were to be honest, I never heard that in this way before, in this context, and I loved it. So under cultural capital, can you provide any examples of cultural knowledge of companies Tahltan people work with? And then also, with so many industries involved with Tahltan economy, how do you protect the natural capital? Some two good questions in there.
So what was the first one?
The first one, can you provide any examples of the cultural knowledge of companies that Tahltan people work with?
The cultural knowledge of the company, not us, not the Tahltan, the company.
That Tahltan work with.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm referring to, like we've worked hard with our teams, our members that go out to the mining companies. They will often go for 3 weeks, right, and come home for a week. It's a completely different culture living there than it is living in their home and going home every night, or being in community, right? Because it's not just Indigenous people. Like we have 2 reserves, well, 3 reserves up there, Iskoot, Dease Lake, and Telegraph Creek, and so that's where the majority of of our members, they all live there, and then the majority of the people within the community are our own people. So our community members learning how to live in community in another culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just when I refer to culture, because there are different ways of doing things within in a workplace, and understanding that. So I think my point that I was trying to make is that's really important that cultural capital is exchanged both ways. If we are going to work successfully, which we have to, with non-Indigenous organizations or companies, we're going to also have to learn their culture as well as they respect our culture. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, 100% makes sense. Okay, so then the other part of her question was, so many industries involved with the Tahltan economy, how do you protect the natural capital?
That is a good question. And, to be very honest with you, at the beginning of all of our economic development within Tahltan territory, ashamedly, it was not a priority like it is now. And, we're talking many years ago, right? There just was not enough of a focus on the land. We have since, really turned our focus to the land, and we've actually turned down several mining companies that wanted to come into the territory. And, now we have boundaries. They can't be, X number of kilometers close to our communities. They can't do this, they can do this. We have lots of sacred spaces, of course, that they're not allowed to go into. You guys have probably all heard about that Jade show. I forget what it was called. It was a show on TV that they did every week. Anyway, we kicked them out of Tahltan territory. That was filmed in Tahltan territory. We had blockades put up, so because they were just coming in and taking the jade and doing whatever they did. They had no permission. They didn't even have permission from the government. So we put a stop to that, and the TV stopped and the jade mining stopped. So, we have now, we've taken it much more seriously, unfortunately. To be, and to be fair though, at the beginning, when these mining companies, really wanted to, take the resources from the land, because of the needs in the community as well, which were largely financial, it was very attractive, right? And that's part of the challenge, is that there was such a need for that income and the money coming into the community, and that what it could do, that overshadowed, unfortunately, the land at the time. But we have, we've kind of went to one end, and now we've come back. So working on that. It was a challenge, but now, like I said, the priority is back to the land.
That's great. That's great news. All right. Anybody else have any questions for our guest speaker? Angela, are you making this PowerPoint available for our participants?
Sure. Absolutely.
I know sometimes our participants, and myself included, like to go back and read what you have to. Okay, Inez, let's go. Come on in.
Oh, hi. I really like the response on the questions. And it's interesting because yesterday I was just looking at this other information, I guess, that I came across. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called the Indigenous Center for Cumulative Effects, ICCE. And they're all about looking at how, I guess, the way that industry or the economy is being built up and how that impacts us in many ways, either social, cultural, health, environmental, and on economic. So I thought that's what, I guess it's funny how it just kind of tied into your presentation too, because I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I see on the website for Tahltan Nation, there's a list of many companies that are sponsors, I guess, for community resources.
Mhm.
And like Tech and Aben Resources, and Imperial Metals, Skeena, Kutchco, Copper Corp, Central Mountain Air. I mean, there's quite a number of them, and I find it fascinating that although where you are located in the northern part of British Columbia, there's so many companies involved right now with your community. So I guess for me, those are like important questions to always be aware of wherever you are in the country of Canada or in our North American environment. But, you know, there's so many impacts upon us as First Nations people. And we need to be more mindful, I guess, of, you know, these impacts upon our peoples. Mhm.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Inez, for your input. All right. Okay, Lauren, in the chat box, in the Northwest Territories, we often get into a discussion about the emphasis on community development versus economic growth, in particular regarding economic capital to fund initiatives. Typically, these two viewpoints, one, develop the local market before looking to export from the community, so it's undercapitalized, versus develop the export community to bring in the capital, focus on money and not development. Really good comments. Any thoughts on that, Angela?
Yeah, you need both for true sustainability, because I mean, you know, a lot of our communities we need outside help. We just do. I mean, and it's nothing, you know, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just, you know, we just do. And just like any other, you know, business, if it wants to grow and expand, they need to extend their borders, right, and their reach. So, you know, we need both. And I think the key to this is sustainability. So, you know, the rock of all great sustainable economic development is always the SMEs. It's the small to medium enterprises. It's, you know, that's really like, what is that? I can't remember what the percentage is, but they are one of the number one job market, right? For the general public, even across Canada, right? Are the small to medium-sized businesses. It's not the great big multinational corporations typically. So if we drill that down and bring it to a community level, what does that mean? It means that, okay, yes, we might work with the mining companies, we might have someone that we joint venture with, but we still need to also focus on our community itself and making sure that, you know, that they are able to provide money for their family. Like I just had this conversation actually with one of our funders, and I said to him, I said, you know, I appreciate the fact that, you know, we want to get those big contracts. I said, but what about the woman? The missing piece to me is, what about the woman that just wants to bring $500 a month home for her kids and her family? What about that? Like, isn't that just as important as, you know, the $5 million business a year? For her family, that's really, really important. And she, you know, so we need to focus on that, helping people, you know, what does it mean to have a home-based business? And bring home $500, $1,000, $1,500 a month, all the way up to the big. But, you know, like I started out small as a small business owner, And I learned incredible skills through that, you know, to enable me to then build a bigger business. But I started with a home-based business. And I think that that combination of both is extremely important.
Yeah, it was a great comment. And it just, being able to find that balance, and also, watching what had happened in those 2 years when kind of the world shut down, and these entrepreneurs, these people from their homes were able to be creative and create these small businesses and these small ideas, and then being able to, like, I've watched a lot of people be able to flourish in that as well. So, support those small businesses, those medium-sized businesses, those home businesses, so important, but also finding that balance too. So thank you for that reflection on that comment, Angela. All right, we got time for one more question. The floor is open. And I keep looking at this saying that you put in there, like, again, like, economic growth without investment in human development is unsustainable and unethical. Like, that just gives me the goosebumps, like, thinking about that. I think I need to post that up in my home somewhere, and in my office. It's a beautiful quote.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I think last chance. So Angela, thank you so much. This was a great presentation. I found it to be very refreshing, some pieces that I hadn't thought about. So just thinking about how to incorporate this into my world and where I go and how I operate my business and work. So thank you so much for the good knowledge that you passed on today. We all honor you. So thank you. And Ken says this right here, for an excellent, thoughtful, and may add on to that, thorough presentation. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. So I hope as we go on the rest of the day, that you drink some water. I really believe creator's best invention. Water is medicine. It is life. Maybe hit out the outdoors, spend that time with connection to the land, listen to those birds, see those flowers, be good and kind to yourself, your spirit, your heart, and to those all around you. So be well, and we'll see you again. So take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.